Fever FM, the number one choice in Leeds.
Nik Peasgood, she's the CEO of Leeds Women's Aid. I welcome you to Fever FM again.
Thank you very much. It's always so lovely to be here.
Thank you very much for giving us your time. And really what we want to do is talk about the domestic violence, really. And you are an expert in this. You've been on Fever a few times before, Nik. Just want to start off, really explain to us, you do the charity work and you've been doing this for a long, long time. Since the last time you came here, is there anything changed? Is there more awareness or?
Yeah, I think I have been doing this job a long time. I think it was probably just a bit less than a year ago that I came on. It was certainly during the lockdown anyway, and things had got really quite difficult for a lot of people during lockdown, and domestic violence and abuse was being reported more anyway. Whether it was happening more, we'll never really know. But we expected that once we came out of lockdown, things might drop down a little bit, but it hasn't. And we're still seeing really high levels of contacts, both on the helpline and through the police and through other community organisations. And the number of referrals we received last week was the highest that we've ever received.
Oh dear.
So it really is a growing problem for all of us to consider, really. But I'd like to think that the fact that people like yourselves and everyone is talking about it much more makes it much more acceptable to talk about it and ask for help. And it doesn't have to be shielded behind closed doors and people being too afraid to say anything. So I do think that the wider awareness means that people will talk about it more, and obviously that will translate into more demand, but that's always a good thing because we don't want people to be suffering in silence.
Yes, yeah. Of course, it's one of the things actually I started my show here, and it's the belief in our society, and especially in men's view, is that they seem that a successful lady, her job is just not going out and working and doing whatever, studying and whatever. So I think her job is just to stay at home and look after the kids and the family, and make that a home, and that's limit her life in there. What do you think to that? Is that mindset changing, do you think, or should it change really?
I think that the mindset that women have to do that should absolutely change, and I think it is changing to some extent. Many women do choose to bring up a family and to make home their life and their work, and that's absolutely fine. It's about choice really, and about respect.
Yes.
We talk about women's roles and men's roles, and I think that's changing a lot, because why should they be defined roles? Why shouldn't anybody be able to do what they want to do, whether that be a role that is seen to be just for women or just for men? I think the society that we're living in now, young people don't want those kind of labels. I think everybody wants to be able to have the chance to do whatever they want to do. But irrelevant really of what people's place in the home is, and what who works and who doesn't work, and what contributions there are to raising children. Women should be respected, whatever they do as part of that family, and violence and abuse doesn't come part of any of that. And I think attitudes around that absolutely need to change, and I think it's all of our role to ensure that that does change, because no major religion condones all major religions condone violence against women. There is no religion that says it's okay to beat your wife or rape your partner or abuse your children. All religions talk about tolerance and respect. And it's how that's adapted into culture that people will often
Yes,
say, well, that's my right, and it isn't.
Of course, I mean, most of our listeners are Muslims, and in Islam, it's one of the first things he says that heaven is under your mother's feet. And mother, of course, everybody's mom is a woman, and so respect really, it doesn't religiously you have to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we work with lots of community organisations. My organisation is really diverse. We've got women working with us from all sorts of different communities and backgrounds and ages. And we work with all faiths, and we work with women that have all sorts of backgrounds. And one thing that unites everyone really when they've experienced violence is that being controlled and being treated poorly. I think most people wouldn't want their mothers, their daughters, their sisters attacked and hurt and humiliated and threatened and killed. Since lockdown, there's been lots of women that have been killed by families and by partners. And that is something that still needs to be talked about.
Of course, I was just going to ask you really, what's the worst kind of, violence you've seen, or the people who've come to you? What's the worst you've seen really?
I think if you can possibly imagine, then we've seen it. Anything that is as horrendous as you could possibly think, we've had experience of working with women that have experienced that. And in Leeds, over the last 6 years, there's been almost 30 killings of mainly women that have been killed, either by partners, husbands, family members, and they're all, or they were, people that had the right to live freely,
of course,
and to be part of a family. And so that's ultimately what we're talking about potentially when we talk about domestic violence. Is it can ultimately lead to somebody being murdered. And that's always on our minds. When we work with somebody, we have to assess what risks they're facing, and what they experienced, and work with them to try to make sure that they're as protected as they can be going forwards, because none of us want somebody to end up being killed. Because obviously that is the worst thing that could possibly happen to somebody.
Obviously, that is an extreme thing.
Yes, absolutely.
But I mean, you do help ladies in. I mean, how does this? How do you define this domestic violence?
Yeah,
what
sure.
signs are there really for people to seek help? What should they be put up with really, or where is the level where they should really come to someone like yourself to seek help?
There's a range of things. When we talk about domestic abuse, we're talking about all sorts of things that might be things like being in a relationship where you don't have any choice about what you want to do. You might be told what to wear, who to speak to, who not to speak to. You might be allowed to go to the shop, but only a certain shop, and you might be timed. You might have to get there and back within a certain time. You might be able to take the children to school, but you might not be able to go and meet friends. You might not be able to speak to your family. And that's really quite common when we're talking about domestic abuse. Most abusive relationships have some element of control within them. There's other things like financial abuse. So somebody could be stopped having access to any money, so that they've got no way of buying anything, no way of having any financial freedom. They might be given money for certain things, but that's all. Or some people have their money stolen from them. Domestic abuse also, we talk about It might be a son or a daughter caring for an elderly parent. They might be taking money from them. They might be controlling them or abusing them in some way. There's not everything is about physical violence. You know,
Yes,
controlling relationships are very difficult for people to experience, and it can be putting you down in front of people, making threats, and also a whole range of physical violence. It could be slaps, punches, pushes, just pushing you around. And then it could, you know, it could escalate to sexual violence, rapes, threats to kill, serious kind of beatings where people end up in hospital. So there's just a massive range of things, and so it's very rare that somebody enters a relationship and very quickly there's physical violence.